Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I'm not even going to do my standard long intro today, Sap, because we have so much to talk about. Some days there's just so much news in the NBA, even in the middle of the playoffs. We're going to start, though, with the game last night, Milwaukee and Brooklyn. The Bucks, in my opinion, blew one of the all-time great opportunities in NBA history, in that you had a very hobbled James Harden, no Kyrie Irving, and a super-powered Kevin Durant, and you could not get the job done to go up 3-2. Instead, Durant has one of the single best playoff performances of all time, and Milwaukee pulls a massive choke job. Sap, do you feel the same way?
Pretty much. I mean, first, you got to give so much credit to Kevin Durant. He was spectacular last night. That may have been his signature game in his great 14-year career. 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists, just the big shots that he hit, the efficiency with which he played, 16 of 23 from the floor, 4 of 9 from three-point land. As I said, 17 rebounds. They needed those to keep Milwaukee off the offensive glass. And then 10 assists. He was able to set up Jeff Green for some wide open threes, and Jeff Green goes 7 of 8 from 3-point territory. So give credit to Kevin Durant, Jeff Green, for hanging in there. But you have to criticize the Milwaukee Bucks for blowing this game. They were up 17 points with 7 minutes left in the third quarter. They found a way to blow this game, whether it be on the offensive or on the defensive end. On the offensive end, they got very stagnant. They decided to continue to take three-point shots, even though they had some favorable matchups. Brook Lopez is standing 35 feet away from the rim, and he's got a 6'2" guy on him. He's 7 feet tall. Bring him down closer to the cup and expose that size difference. They didn't hunt James Harden enough. James Harden played 46 minutes somehow on a bulky hamstring. He was just kind of out there as a decoy on offense and as just someone in the way on defense. And Milwaukee never attacked him. And it was really pronounced late in the game, Jet, when Giannis was posting him up and decided to take a fadeaway rather than going strong to the basket, and Harden was waving off any help because Giannis, again, as I've said a million times, Jet, wonderful player, big guy, athletic, plays his ass off. He has no feel for the game. In that situation, he's got to take Harden down low and abuse him. He's got a 6-7-inch advantage, and he's obviously much healthier at this point. Also defensively for Milwaukee, you saw Kevin Durant heating up. At some point, change your defense on him, double team him, get the ball out of his hands. And maybe Giannis should have played him for the final 5 minutes of the game. Giannis, first team all defensive NBA, defensive player of the year a year ago, and he never checked Kevin Durant. PJ Tucker did the best job he could. Chris Middleton got abused. Why not have Giannis on him at some moment? Or why not double team him or throw junk defenses at him, a box and one, something to look different, because Kevin Durant was way too comfortable last night. And when a player that great is that comfortable, we see 49 points and a great win for the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, give credit to Durant and Jeff Green, but massive criticism should be sent to the Milwaukee Bucks, whether it be Giannis not coming up big in the end, Drew Holiday deciding to chuck up three-pointers when he's got James Harden on him rather than taking him to the basket, and Mike Budenholzer, if he loses this series, he's losing his job. You have to implore Giannis to pick up Durant the final 5 or 6 minutes of the game. You have what is considered one of the best defensive players in the league, and you don't have him cover Kevin Durant. Change defenses, do something. Look, Charles Barkley nailed it at halftime. When Milwaukee was up by 16, he goes, he's picking them to win the NBA championship, and he said, but they're one of the dumbest teams he's ever seen, and he's accurate about that. And now the series is in Brooklyn's favor, although Kyrie's probably out for the rest of the series. Harden, if he plays in Game 6, he's not going to really be a factor. So I would expect Milwaukee to be able to win Game 6 unless they are totally spent from last night emotionally and have a no-show back in Milwaukee for Game 6. I think Milwaukee should win that game, and we'll have a Game 7, and we'll probably see another epic performance from Kevin Durant because that's how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it with all your points, and all those are all the same points I was going to mention, Sep. I think it was one of the all-time worst coaching performances I've ever seen in a big game. Just poor decision after poor decision, and that's the coach is the guy who should, adjust the defenses, like you were saying. There's no reason that we've talked about this before. Listen, you can't guard Kevin Durant, but you can at least try to make it a little bit more difficult to them. Putting Middleton on him at the end of the game made absolutely no sense. It was like literally asking to have Kevin Durant be able to score at will. I mean, he could just shoot over Middleton, no problem. It almost seemed like they were protecting Giannis defensively.
Mm-hmm.
It was bizarre. No reason that should have happened. No reason that James Harden, who when healthy is a poor defender, wasn't being attacked every single time defensively with basically on one leg. It made absolutely no sense. I just think that you and I were texting during the game, and you said you usually don't like to use the term choking, but this was just a complete choke job, Sap. I mean, this was the game, the opportunity for the Milwaukee Bucks, probably the biggest game in their franchise since the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson game days. I know they went to a conference finals once with Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson, but nobody thought that team could win a championship. This team has the ability to win a championship, and it was right there for the taking in this game. And they lost to essentially one guy and Jeff Green, who does seem to come up big in big games sometimes, but no excuse. Giannis' stat line looks great, but he failed at the end of the game. Mike Budenholzer did a terrible job coaching this game. The team should be really, really embarrassed and disappointed. I don't think even with a hobble James Harden and Kevin Durant being tired that Milwaukee wins the next game. I think that they are just emotionally shot. This was the time to do it. They failed. They had a lead. They blew it. They didn't execute any sort of smart game plan. All credit goes to Kevin Durant, who dragged this team to what is just a massive, massive win.
He was sensational, and he's generally always sensational. How many times have I told you? And I sometimes can't even make it clear enough my praise of Kevin Durant as a scorer, right? I think the best way to put it is I don't know of any player in the history of the league, or at least since I've been watching, who is a combination elite scorer and shooter, right? And Steph Curry is an elite shooter, but he's not an elite scorer. Shaq and Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, elite scorers, but not elite shooters. I mean, Jordan was an outstanding shooter, but not like Kevin Durant, whose range is endless. I can't think of anyone. I mean, I had some people reach out to me on Twitter and say maybe Jerry West was that guy, but Jerry West retired in 1974. It was a different league, and Jerry West was 6'2", 6'3". This guy is 7 feet tall. I don't know if we've seen anyone quite like him. Look at the efficiency last night, Jet. 16 of 23 from the floor. That's 70%. 45% on threes. He had an off night at the free throw line, but he was 13 for 16. He scores 49 points so efficiently. Throws in 17 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He was clearly the best player on the floor. And I text you late in the game when it was evident that the Nets were going to win that game because Durant was not going to be stopped, that maybe the mantle has been passed. And again, I don't want to be hyperbolic. And again, I'm a huge LeBron fan. Maybe now you could say Kevin Durant is the best player in basketball. We'll see what happens the rest of this series. If he wins a championship, if the Brooklyn Nets win the championship this year, last night is going to be the turning point. Kind of like LeBron in 2012 when he came to TD Garden down 3-2, facing elimination, and he put up, 45, 15, and 7. He was just as good as Durant was last night, maybe even more so because he was down 3-2 playing against a championship caliber team in the Celtics, and he just was at his best. I mean, and that was the turning point. And the Heat ended up winning a championship that year. If Brooklyn wins it this year, last night's the game that you say, wow, Kevin Durant really, and we know how great this guy is. He doesn't need to do that to be in that top 20, but this could elevate him among the all-time greats because that was just spectacular. That shot he hit, Jet, when they were up 1 as the shot clock ran down, and Harden, for some reason, they double-teamed Harden 40 feet from the hoop. I don't know what they were doing there. James Harden was going to beat you there. Harden got rid of the ball. Durant caught it at the logo, took 1 step forward, and sank a 3-pointer over Chris Middleton, gave them a 4-point lead. If he misses that shot, Milwaukee comes down only 1 with an opportunity to win. That is one of the most incredible shots I've ever seen. It wasn't a bank shot. If he banks it in, you could say, well, he just fired it and he was a little bit lucky. He swished it like he does most every shot he has.
I said this, Seth. He's
sensational.
The greenest light in the history of the NBA. There's no bad shots for him.
No question. No.
You have no problem with him taking any shot on the court. It's all good for him. I mean, literally, the guy can hit a shot from any angle at any
Yeah.
place on the court and can shoot over everybody. So, shoot away, Kevin Durant. I have no problem with him taking any single
No.
shot at any situation. He's the best scorer in the league, Sap. And explain this to me from a coaching perspective. How does James Harden end up playing more minutes than anybody on Milwaukee? How do you allow that to
Right.
happen if you're the Bucks? What the hell is Budenholzer doing? What the hell are the Bucks made of? This was pathetic. And every fan around the NBA who's not a Brooklyn fan, of which there aren't many Brooklyn fans, should be furious with the Bucks. This was the chance to put this team away, and you couldn't do it. And you had the opportunities, not just because they were hobbled, but because you had matchup advantages that you could have taken advantage of, and you didn't do it. It just, I don't understand how there's no reason the Bucks should have lost that game.
No.
Even with Durant going bananas, there's no reason they should have lost that game.
Isn't there a player on the Bucks roster who is a veteran enough to say, James Harden's out here on one leg. He's not a good defender on two legs. Normally an NBA player will run 5 to 6 miles. Harden probably ran 2 miles last night, if that. He was just out there as a decoy on offense. He moved the ball okay on offense. He scored less than 10 points, had 8 assists, 5 points. He hit like kind of a goofy bank shot that went in, and he got the N1. He had 8 assists. So offensively, he just kind of directed traffic, and he was a decoy. Fine. On the defensive end, he should have been a liability. He should have been hunted from the get-go, whether it was Drew Holiday. There was a point in the fourth quarter where Holiday just blew by him for a layup. Brooklyn doesn't have a rim protector. Like Giannis and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton should have a easy path to the basket, not worrying about a rim protector. I mean, Kevin Durant's their best rim protector among everything else. Go to the basket. Holiday did it one time down the court. The next time he's got James Harden on him, he chucks up a three-pointer. This team is three-point happy. Giannis should not attempt three-point shots. He's just not good at it. I mean, he's not a good free throw shooter. You hope he kind of works his way through that because, he should be able to get to the line a lot. And he did hit 69% this year. If he could do that in this series, maybe Milwaukee's in better shape. It's frustrating. It was frustrating to watch. It really was, from the coach to the players. Like, it just looked like they froze and had no plan to win. It also felt like they were just trying to milk the clock at some point and go, okay, we're up 14, we're up 12. Let's just hope Durant doesn't go off and the clock runs down. They felt like a team playing soccer. Like, I'm watching Italy, Switzerland right now. Italy has a 2-0 lead in the second half. This is over because Italy's the best team in the world.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have my Azzurri blue on, but they got some sweet uniforms. I'm going to have to find a shirt, an Italian shirt. It's the Azzurri blue with a little bit of black trim. It is sweet. Ooh. But when Italy gets a 2-goal lead internationally, it's over because they just put up a chain link fence around the other team. Well, that's what Milwaukee was trying to do, and they gave up 71 points in the second half, scored 49. It was an epic feel, and I'll give the guys on TNT all the credit in the world because even at halftime, when Milwaukee was up 16, they all kind of felt like Milwaukee should be up by 25, 30 points in this game because Durant didn't start the game off all that great. You let him hang around, and we know how good he is. He scored 20 in the fourth quarter. That's what Kevin Durant does. So you may be right, Jet. They may just go back to Milwaukee and have nothing left because they had a golden opportunity to win. I don't think they're the mentally toughest team. I don't think they're a very smart team. And again,
no, they're not a smart team.
It trickles down from your best player, Jet. And look, I love Giannis. Who doesn't? The story is fascinating. He seems like a great guy. Signed the max contract in Milwaukee. You love Giannis. He has no freaking feel for the game. He just doesn't. If I see one more offensive foul of him just charging into the lane and knocking people over like it's bowling, I'm going to throw something at my TV. He has absolute no feel for the game. He throws up mid-range shots like jump hooks that almost break the backboard. He doesn't have a refined game whatsoever. That's okay in the regular season when you're catching, the Charlotte Hornets on the 4th and a 5-night stretch, and you destroy them. In the postseason, when the other team can really gear up for you, your warts are exposed, and we've seen that in the series. Even though he's put up good numbers, they're kind of hollow.
They're done, Sap. This was his best chance to win a championship with the Brooklyn injuries and the way the West opened up with no Lakers, and the Bucks being relatively healthy with the exception of Dante DiVincenzo. This was the chance for Milwaukee to win their second franchise championship and Giannis to win his first. They blew it last night. They're not going to win this series. He's not going to win a title with this team. They have no mechanism to improve. Brooklyn's going to block them. Presumably they'll be healthier next year. They're done. Milwaukee's done. This was the game to get it done. They didn't. And this might be one of those games where, a city reflects on 30 years down the line and said, man, if we had just gotten that game, it's like in Minneapolis, fans still talk about Morton Anderson. I think it was missing it was a Gary Anderson missing a big kick in the was Randy Moss a rookie on that team that year?
It was. They were 15-1. They were 15-1. Gary Anderson, who I don't think missed a field goal all year, missed a very makeable field goal, would have put them up 10. Instead, the game stayed at 7. Atlanta forced overtime, won in overtime. Then Atlanta got blitzed by Denver in the Super Bowl. Denver was great that year. That would have been a great Super Bowl, actually. Denver against Minnesota after the 98 season. But yeah, the Vikings have been irrelevant ever since.
But those are sort of the plays, right? Or the games.
Yeah.
You remember it as a community or as a city or as a fan, and you said, man, if this had just gone another way, if Brooklyn had at any given time James Harden and Joe Harris on the court, who are both piss poor defenders, and neither one of them was hunted at all. They didn't go to the basket. This was just an epic failure, Sap. Choke job failure, whatever you want to call it. This was the opportunity for Milwaukee. Brooklyn snatched it away from them. And really, everybody who has a basketball conscience should be very disappointed in the Milwaukee Bucks today.
Charles Barkley said it was an embarrassment. As great as Kevin Durant was last night, and he was great, all-time great, a lot of this falls on the Milwaukee Bucks just essentially gagging this game away. And I'm not one to use choke very often in sports, but they choked last night, from the head coach to the star player to the other guys on the team. I mean, Brook Lopez is taking 35 footers. He's 7 feet tall, and he's got a 6'2" guy on him. Take him down low, abuse him. Giannis has a hobble James Harden, who's 6 inches shorter than him, in the low post, go right to the basket, dunk. Instead, he attempts a fadeaway, which he's not going to hit. He's not Joel Embiid.
The Celtics even knew to do that in that game that Jason Tatum had 50 against the Nets. They just hunted crappy players on the Nets. That's all they did. That's not rocket science.
No, and it shouldn't even have to fall on the coach. I mean, Drew Holiday's a veteran. We both like him a lot. Doesn't he see James Harden can't defend him? Just take him to the basket. 2 points is better than none. 3 is better than 2. I get it. But, they're streaky as a 3-point shooting team, and things get tight at the end of games for guys outside of Kevin Durant, who just look, what he did last night was incredibly memorable. Maybe he's taking the mantle from LeBron James. Maybe I'm overreacting. I mean, they still got to win a championship. And look, we all agree that LeBron, KD are kind of in their own league at this point. And then just below them, I'd say Steph and Kawhi are the next 2 guys. Those are the 4 guys because they've all won championships and they've won, individual awards, all those great things. They're kind of elevated themselves from everybody else in the league because the other guys haven't won championships or they're young. They're trying to make their way. Those are the 4 guys. So,
I think that's fair.
I mean, at this point, I'm not going to just dismiss LeBron because his team got knocked out in the first round and Durant is maybe on his way to winning his 3rd championship. They still have to make it happen. Apparently, you're not even going to watch Game 6 because you've got Milwaukee losing to Brooklyn. I think they still have a puncher's chance. But again, what lead is safe with them? If they get up 22 in the 3rd quarter, in the back of their minds, it's going to be, well, we've got to finish this off, right?
They know how big of an opportunity that was last night. And then I think that really rattles the team. So I don't think they're going to win. And we'll talk about that game more tomorrow as we preview it. But I think that they look at it and go, man, what a missed opportunity. We could have marched our way to the championship had we won this game, and instead it's Brooklyn completely in the driver's seat.
Right.
So I just don't know that they have the intestinal fortitude to be able to come back with a win. But we'll have to see, Sap. But this is also, last note about this game before we move on, because there's a ton of stuff to talk about. This is exactly why everybody wanted to see Kevin Durant either stay on Oklahoma City or go to a team that wasn't the Warriors or not the Nets, because he has the ability to drag a suboptimal roster to a potential championship or win a huge game. You saw it last night. This is what LeBron did when he had, injuries to Kyrie and Kevin Love, and he was able to drag a crap team with the help of Jeff Green, coincidentally.
He always shows up, Jeff Green, doesn't he? He knows to play with LeBron and Kevin Durant. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, good on you, Jeff Green. So I think that's why it's so disappointing in saying you can point to this and say, hey, KD, you don't need all these unbelievable talents to be. You're good enough to be able to drag a team by yourself. Few players are. There might just be two of them. There might just be Durant and LeBron. But that's why right here this is a perfect example of why people turned on Durant, because he didn't need Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steph Curry. And he doesn't need Kyrie and James Harden. He doesn't need all of this. He's good enough with a average to below average roster to put on a team that has championship aspirations.
Well, last night was really one of the first times he's been asked to do that, and he came through. Is he going to do that consistently? I don't know. I don't know if he's built that way. He's not as durable as LeBron. He's not as big and strong. He's taller. He doesn't have quite the varied game that LeBron does, although last night the 17 rebounds, the 10 assists, the 3 steals, and the 2 blocks was damn good to go along with the 49 points. So he hasn't been asked to do that in his career. I don't think he necessarily has the makeup to do that. Jordan and Kobe had that makeup because they were like, damn, get the hell out of my way. I'm going to take the shot. If I'm triple teamed, we're going down with me taking the last shot. Durant hasn't always had that type of mentality. Obviously, physically, he can do it, but can he sustain it over an entire playoff series? Now, we're going to see what happens in Game 6. I would assume Kyrie's not going to play. We'll preview it tomorrow. If Harden plays, what actually does he add? He played 46 minutes the other night. And this is kind of maddening that if he played 46 minutes, why doesn't Giannis play 48 minutes? I mean, Giannis appears to be in great shape. Now, I get it that
Jrue Holiday played 10 less minutes than him.
Right, and he appears capable of playing more minutes. And look, they didn't even play Bobby Portis, who I thought would have been a nice piece for 8 to 10 minutes, maybe to get in Kevin Durant's way. I think one way to defend Durant, other than just hope and pray, which is unfortunately what Giannis said after the game. He said he's the best player in the world, and when he shoots, you just hope he misses. You don't want your star player to say that. You hope he kind of says, I should try to defend him and maybe stop him.
I don't know why he didn't.
But throw multiple looks at him, right? So, okay, maybe now Kevin Durant figured out PJ Tucker, who they called closer last night than they did in Milwaukee. They called it closer. So now you put, Chris Middleton on him. He's 5 inches short. He can't cover him. You would hope they'd go to Giannis, but Bobby Portis is a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", who kind of has the FU mentality of, I'll cover him. Let me go out there. Even if it's for 3 or 4 possessions, just give him a different look, right? Even if you go to a box and one on one trip down the court, why not double him? Get the ball out of his hands. Make James Harden beat you, because he couldn't hit anything last night.
Except Giannis was guarding Joe Harris, who doesn't move on offense.
He's standing with him in the corner. He's
that's all, I mean, that's his game, is he stands in the corner, shoots threes. I mean, he's very good at it, but you don't need the guy who won Defensive Player of the Year last year to just stand there.
Yeah, I mean, this would be like the Mets having Francisco Lindor, who's one of the best fielding shortstops in baseball, and saying, you know what? We're going to play him in left field where no one hits the ball anymore. The team we're playing likes to hit the center and right. Let me take my best defensive player and make him irrelevant. That's exactly what Milwaukee did. Look, if this doesn't end well for Milwaukee, you don't think it's going to end well. I still think there's going to be a Game 7 in this series. He just feels that way. Mike Budenholzer is going to be out of work, and maybe the Celtics can interview him after they interview Stan Van Gundy, because suck-ass coaches may be interviewed by the Celtics, because talk about retreads in the NBA, but someone like, well, I wouldn't say Darvin Ham, because he's on the Milwaukee coaching staff. Maybe that's not a good thing.
Budenholzer's he's a better coach than Stan Van Gundy. He's a fine coach, but he has a block in the playoffs. Clearly, I mean,
he sure does.
He's a great regular season coach, but this was an embarrassment. But go ahead, Seth. Do you want to move on?
No, you're right. Let's move on. We could spend 4 hours on this game, but let's move on, because there's so much that happened today. It's amazing that whatever ESPN pays Woj, it's not enough, because it felt like every 45 minutes there was a bigger story breaking, whether it be coaches, players, and all of this crazy day in the NBA.
Yeah, so let's get to two absences. I don't want to say injuries because one is an injury, one is an absence
Mm-hmm.
that are really going to shake up the Western Conference. The first is it looks like Kawhi Leonard is done for this series, maybe the postseason. He has an ACL injury, not 100% sure if it's torn or what. He was looking a little gimpy on his knee in the last game, and now it's confirmed that he's going to miss at the very least their game tonight. Probably done for the playoffs, it's
Right.
looking like, which means the Clippers are in turn done for the playoffs. And then we also have Chris Paul, who is now in the COVID protocol, which, as the Celtics saw with Tristan Thompson, could last like 3 months. Who the hell knows? So
It
those
really
those
is.
are two massive stories in the Western Conference now.
Yeah, I mean, the first one that was reported today was Chris Paul. So the Suns are in the best position of any team because they've already advanced. They're going to get plenty of rest. Uh, now that Chris Paul gets that rest, you would think he'll be healthy for the Western Conference Finals. And then this story drops that he's in the COVID protocol. Has he been vaccinated? What was the exposure? How long will he be in quarantine? What exactly is the situation? It's not clear yet, all the particulars about this. He's the president of the Players Union. Now, I know all the LeBron haters think that the league cut LeBron a solid, did LeBron a solid back before the playoffs when he may have gone into COVID protocol because there may have been some exposure because he was at a party
Right.
with his new tequila company and masks were off and whatever. Uh, would it shock you if the league tries to navigate to have Chris Paul play if it's not that serious? Because he's the president of the Players Union, and kind of an amazing story in this postseason. That's a pretty cool story. This all-time great player is one step away from getting to the NBA Finals with his 15 finally making it there, and with all these great young players. So we'll see what happens with that. I hope he didn't do something stupid or negligent because you're that close to getting there, and then if there's a slip up and the league finds out about it, and now you're out, a couple of games. And again, it's a great mystery, and it's undetermined what is going to happen over the next several days or even longer.
Yeah, again, the NBA is fair. It's fair because it's a private health matter, pretty tight-lipped with all these individual cases of COVID and COVID protocols. And we've seen guys be able to come back pretty quickly from them, just a couple of days, and saying, oh, false alarm. And other guys, like I said, with the Celtics, you had a couple guys, Fournier, Tristan Thompson, out for extended periods of time.
Right.
And they just say COVID protocols. You don't know if Chris Paul has COVID, was close to somebody with COVID. All they say is in the protocol. So he could be, for all we know, he could be able to play in game one, or he could not be able to play in the Western Conference Finals at all. It's a great mystery. It does seem a lot more clear that Kawhi Leonard isn't going to play at all, at least the rest of the series. And if the Clippers advance, probably not in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, these are two major stars. And two guys that I think their respective teams cannot win without or advance without, regardless of if the Clippers are able to end up taking one more game and winning this series from Utah. I don't think that they could beat. Actually, if Chris Paul doesn't play, I guess they could beat Phoenix. I don't know, Sep. I'm at almost a loss for words. It's so shocking.
Someone's going to win. It is shocking. You're at a loss for words, and I am too at this point because it was so unnerving to hear, first of all, Chris Paul and then Kawhi Leonard. Now, we saw Kawhi Leonard at the end of game 4. It seemed like he tweaked something in his knee. Kawhi looks to me like an old 29. Like, there's moments in games where he explodes. We saw that dunk over Derek Favors the other night. That was just a thing of beauty. But there's other times where he doesn't seem to be moving the way a 29-year-old moves. He's had whatever injury concerns. We know he does load management. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to plow through certain injuries. And look, I'm not going to sound like the old guy here who, watched the NBA in the 70s and 80s. I think the players today are much more aware of the injury situations they're dealing with and the after effects of those injuries. Kevin McHale played in 1987 in the playoffs with a broken foot. And to this day, Kevin McHale cannot walk correctly, and it still bothers him. I'm sure he thinks, well, I put one up for the team. We got to the finals. We lost to the Lakers in 6 games. I'd do it over again. I think the way now that we have more information, players are like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm making plenty of money. I'm not going to jeopardize my future that I'm not going to be able to walk because of these injuries. So
Right.
that's something that you have to weigh with Kawhi Leonard. Now this puts so much pressure on Paul George, who's playing very well in the postseason, but now there's a ton of pressure on him. He's not the guy you want to put pressure on if you're the Clippers. He's much better suited to be a second guy. Utah looks like they're out of sorts as well. Mike Conley doesn't appear like he's coming back. Donovan Mitchell's dealing with an ankle. And now with what's going on in Phoenix, someone is going to represent the Western Conference in the finals. It's certainly going to be a flawed team. If you're the Phoenix Suns, though, you're hoping that the Clippers and Utah go to 7 games, because if that series goes to 7
you want as
games,
much time as possible.
Much time as possible. Game 7 would be Sunday in Utah. Western Conference Finals would start on Tuesday, either in Phoenix or Utah. That's 5 days away, 6 days away. You would think that hopefully for the Suns, that would work its way out with Chris Paul, whatever the situation is. But these were two massive stories. And if you're the Utah Jazz, you're like, geez, this might open up for us. Kawhi not playing, we should be able to beat the Clippers. And if Chris Paul misses even the first 2 games of the Western Conference Finals, big advantage to Utah, who, by the way, would have home court advantage against Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals. They were 1 game better in the regular season. So it kind of opens up for Utah, but they've got their own issues with Mike Conley not playing, and Donovan Mitchell doesn't appear to be 100% either. And look, LeBron James took to Twitter today, and he's the most visible player in the sport, and said, this is what I was talking about, that the offseason was way too short. We started up a month earlier than we should have, and now you're seeing players dropping like flies, whether it was Kyrie with the ankle, Harden with the hamstring, Kawhi now with the knee. I mean, it's just endless. Mike Conley
but
with the
like
hamstring.
we said the other day, Sap, this happens every postseason. So I think
Not
that's
like
kind of
this,
bogus.
though. This is like every team.
The Kyrie thing has nothing to do with fatigue. I don't think. I mean, that happens in basketball. He twisted his ankle. Maybe the Harden thing, you could say. Chris Paul,
thing is a knee.
obviously nothing to do with
no. Embiid. Embiid fell, but he tweaked the knee. A lot of players are out.
Tweaked his knee in regular seasons before, Sep. I don't know. I think this is LeBron injecting himself in the playoffs that he's no longer part of anymore.
Well, I think he has every right to do that, though. He's still the face of the league.
He loves to finger wag. He loves to finger wag.
He was praising Kevin Durant last night. He's sending prayers to Kawhi Leonard. Deep down, LeBron's probably like, anybody but the Clippers and Nets can win the world championship, and I'll be happy with that. I think LeBron secretly is cheering for Phoenix because they beat the Lakers. That looks better if the team that beat you goes on and wins the championship. And also it's Chris Paul, his closest friend in the league, who's never won anything. So I know LeBron probably, if you could get truth serum into him, would say, I'm a Phoenix Suns fan for the next month.
Yeah. I also look at it too, is LeBron is, kind of baking in we were hurt as the Lakers because of this condensed season. That's why we didn't advance, which is partially true. I don't know if it had anything to do with the condensed season. Anthony Davis is always hurt anyways. And also, I said this at the time when he was arguing against starting the season when they did. I don't think LeBron takes into account at all, because of his situation, the financial ramifications for the average player. I don't think he gets that. I don't think it registers with him at all.
No.
Most players are not in the situation that LeBron James is in. Most players really need all the money they can get to set themselves up for the rest of their lives. LeBron James was set up for the rest of his life when he turned 18 years old. So it's a different situation, and I don't think he's taking that at all into account when he's saying, well, we should have played less games or started later. Well, that means less money for, the 8th, 9th, 10th guy on the end of the bench, who I'm not going to say they need the money. They're all making lots of money, but it makes a much bigger difference to them than it does to LeBron James, who, could never earn a penny for the rest of his life, and his grandkids are already set up.
Yeah, he could live comfortably off the interest. So, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. But he is the face of the league. He likes to opine, and I like that he's visible on Twitter, and I think he watches the games. He is a true sports fan.
I
think he has every right to do that. Yeah.
All right. So we got those impactful injuries, and one is again a guy missing time because of COVID, and then we have some coaching moves today in the NBA. Sap, you were probably chief among the lobbyists against Stan Van Gundy. So I'm sure you're happy today. He is out in New Orleans. So Zion will get his third coach in 3 years, which is
Pretty
obviously
much.
not a great way to run a franchise. And also, the Wizards will have a new coach next year as Scotty Brooks is done in Washington, and potentially Dallas might be getting a new coach as they're looking for a new GM as Dave parlays with longtime GM Donnie Nelson and the other guy whose name I can't pronounce, who Luka Doncic does not like. So clearly Dallas doing the right thing and cleaning house to make sure Luka Doncic is happy. But big personnel moves in the NBA. Van Gundy did a terrible job coaching this year, Sap. I agree with you. I had him as my worst coach of the year with Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
Brad Stevens got promoted. Stan Van Gundy gets fired. Shows you the intelligence of the Celtics versus the Pelicans organization. And Scott Brooks is just not a great coach. I mean, he's not.
No. I mean, he got along well with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City, which is very important for a coach to get along with your two best players. He goes to Washington. They had a decent run a couple of years ago when they lost to the Celtics in the second round in 7 games, when they had John Wall playing at a high level and Bradley Beal playing at a high level, and nothing else really took place in Washington. Look, he'll probably resurface on someone's bench, maybe as an assistant coach. Stan Van Gundy, when I heard that they hired him just last October, so he lasted all of 8 months, I was like, why the hell are they hiring him? Short, heavy guy who seems to be out of touch with today's NBA, who just yells at players, and he's got all these really good young players on New Orleans, Zion and Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. You could build something with those really good young players, and it didn't work out, which was no surprise. Now he's gone. If I'm New Orleans, you should be able to recruit a pretty damn good coach because of Zion. They're going to be a visible franchise for the foreseeable future. Hopefully they can get someone like Monty Williams. I know I'm in love with Monty Williams. I wanted the Lakers to hire him 2 years ago. I think he is just absolutely one of the best coaches in the business because of the person that he is. That's half of it. The X and O stuff, look, the players know how to play. There's assistant coaches.
No, it's not an X and O league. It's not.
It's a people league, and you have to motivate your players to play defense. That's probably the biggest thing a coach has to do, and just relate to players, and that's why Monty Williams has been successful. I think Monty Williams was very smart to embrace Chris Paul. Chris Paul embraced him, and it worked well in Phoenix. So New Orleans is going to have to go out and find someone who can, be on the good side of Zion Williamson. And if that's the case, I think they'll be a playoff team next year.
Do they want Brad Stevens? We'll give him to them. Won't take
Look,
much.
I've maintained Brad Stevens is not going to last long in this new cockamamie position that he's in, president of basketball operations. He's going to coach sooner than later. And if another team reaches out to the Celtics and said, we're interested in Brad Stevens, Wick Grossbeck will go, here's his number, get a hold of him. If you want him, he's yours. This way, Wick Grossbeck's off that $40 million deal that they still owe him, and he'll go coach in New Orleans, or Indiana's got a vacancy.
A lot of teams
Portland has a vacancy. There's a lot of teams do. Yeah,
it's
Portland
does. Indiana, Washington, Boston,
maybe Dallas,
New Orleans, possibly Dallas. I feel like I'm forgetting another team too. A lot of job openings in the NBA.
And a lot of good ones, right? Because you got Luka in Dallas, you got Jason Tatum in Boston, you got Zion in New Orleans. And then you hear the Celtics are interviewing Stan Van Gundy. Like, Stan Van Gundy got rejected by Zion Williamson. Why would Jason Tatum embrace Stan Van Gundy? Like, horrible choice if that's the case. Maybe they're just doing due diligence. But spend time on candidates that you really want, which to me is Chauncey Billups would be my first choice. My second choice would be Sam Cassell. Now, Sam Cassell is coaching with Philadelphia. Chauncey Billups is with the Clippers. They're still in the playoffs. But this isn't the NFL where you've got to get someone in place right away for the offseason. I mean, wait till you get the right guy. Just don't hire someone that's available. Wait. If it takes another week, 2 weeks to get Chauncey Billups, then do what you have to do. Although I think Chauncey Billups may be courted by the Portland Trailblazers, which is another good job, right? Because you've got Dame Lillard there. I mean, there's appealing jobs out there in the NBA. The Celtics have to find the right guy. But if they hire Stan Van Gundy, I may, cancel NBC Sports Boston.
Yeah, I don't think they will.
You can't do that on cable, but I may do that.
I don't think they will hire him. Maybe it's a courtesy. I don't know what the hell they're doing anymore, Sappy. I mean, we've been over this ad nauseum. I don't know what they're doing in general.
No, I don't.
I have no idea.
They do. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting with all these coaching decisions, and it will be interesting to see what New Orleans does, because they really need uh they need something to stabilize that organization. You have this great young talent. You have another really good player in Brandon Ingram. You can't just be cycling through coaches every year. They need some
No.
stability. You need to find Zion, the right coach, and maybe that means he should be part of the process. I don't know. He's a little young to be part of this. You'd think to have a real influence over what they do, but he's obviously the cornerstone of that franchise, and you can't go another year with him not making the playoffs and firing your coach again. So we'll have to see what they do. I obviously think that is a desirable job. As you mentioned, the Celtics, regardless of what's going on, because they have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, is a desirable job, as is Portland because they have Dame Lillard. That's the case in the NBA right now. If you go to a team, you're going to have a couple star players. Hell, Washington has two of them also. They have Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook.
Right.
So it's not like there's really any more crap jobs in the NBA. It's a pretty, you're landing in a situation that you can make work, at least to try to compete for the playoffs. I'm not saying every team has the chance to win a championship. That's ridiculous. But you should have pieces in place to try to make a run at the playoffs if you're a really good coach. So we'll see what happens there, Sap. Believe it or not, even more news in the NBA, as we had the All NBA teams yesterday. We also had Rookie of the Year. Looked like that leaked, and that's going to be your guy, LaMelo Ball over Anthony Edwards. But let's talk about the All NBA team, Sap. As the big story actually is that two guys, Jason Tatum and Donovan Mitchell, don't make an All NBA team. That costs them approximately $30 million apiece. Because they don't get the extra kicker into their contract that making an All NBA team enables them to make. I think that especially Jason Tatum has a very, very legitimate gripe for not making the team. I'll read the team, Sep. First team was pretty much a no-brainer. Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Giannis, Jokic, who was the MVP, and Kawhi Leonard. Second team, Dame Lillard, Chris Paul, Julius Randle, LeBron James, Joel Embiid. Third team, Bradley Beal, Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, Rudy Gobert. I know when we did this a couple weeks ago, you had LeBron James. I did not. I think it's insane that LeBron James made an All-NBA team and Jason Tatum didn't, just based off of the fact that games played. Same for Jimmy Butler. Same for Kyrie Irving. I think Jason Tatum has a really, really legitimate gripe.
Well, I mean, you can't compare Tatum with Irving. Irving's a guard, Tatum's a forward.
I know it's
right?
a different position.
So, and somehow someone on Twitter last night was trying to paint it that Kyrie Irving may have cost Jason Tatum a spot on the All NBA team. I'm like, one's a guard, one's a forward. They're not in competition for positions. That would be like saying that Francis McDormand cost Chadwick Boseman the Oscar, which that's not the case. It was Anthony Hopkins, or the voters decided not to give him the Oscar. So, like, that made no sense whatsoever. I thought the league was much deeper among guards than forwards. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, to me, feels like an all-NBA player, but what guard would you take out and put in?
Kyrie.
Would you put? Do you think Kyrie? I think Kyrie had a better year than Donovan Mitchell. They both missed a lot of games.
Yeah,
Kyrie
Donovan
Irving was
Mitchell's
incredible
team had
this
the
year.
best record in the NBA.
Yeah, and Brooklyn had the fourth best record. I know everybody here hates Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie Irving was better than Donovan Mitchell this year. More efficient, played as many games, scored more points. I think he had more assists. So, but the depth at guard was better than at forward. If I'm Jason Tatum, I would be more upset that Butler made it, because Butler missed a lot of games. Paul George had a really good year, so maybe he deserves to be third team. I voted for LeBron third team, not second team. I actually had Jason Tatum on my second team with Julius Randle.
I think it's
so. Not that I have a vote, but that's how.
In a normal year where LeBron plays every game, of course you put him on. He didn't. I just don't think he deserved it this year. The team wasn't that good, and he didn't play that many games.
He played 50. He played 50 games, I believe, or 48 games.
I just don't think
he played
that should qualify
2/3 of the
you.
season. Well, Joel Embiid was second team. He missed 22 games.
Yeah, part of that is the position he plays.
Well, yeah, I mean that's another thing too, is that now Rudy Gobert is going to make the Hall of Fame because he's 3 times been voted defensive player of the year. And every year he's going to be third team all NBA because there's only like 4 centers in the league and you have to have one. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Do you just pick the 15 best players in the league?
Yeah, I think they should scrap the positions now. I really do.
It is kind of positionless basketball. I mean, the way I put players in positions, it's big, smalls, and wings. That's kind of what it is. Like, what is Jimmy Butler? He's kind of a wing guy. I mean, I know he's technically a forward, but, he's kind of a hybrid player, right? So, yeah, I mean, maybe scrap him. And I mean, the big story is it cost Jason Tatum and Donovan Mitchell money. Now, you know this stuff more than I do, the contracts and all of this other stuff. If they are first, second, or third team next year, does that bonus money kick in?
I think it kicks in for the next year, but not
for the next years. Right.
Yeah. So this year he lost a significant amount of money.
Right. I think it's like $8 million per year. So, I mean, it may have cost him $30 million, but he may get 8 of it back next year, 8 of it the next year, 8 of it the next year. I'm never going to feel sorry for guys that are making a ton of money. I always am pro player rather than pro owner. I'd like to see these guys make as much as they can. But I think Mitchell and Tatum are well compensated, have a lot of money off the court, so that doesn't bother me. You do want to see them get it right, and again, I think for the most part they do an okay job with this. But it's just that the positions are so blurred at this point.
Tatum and Butler. Tatum averaged more points per game and more rebounds per game, and their teams played in more games, and their teams were basically equivalent. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. Listen, the Celtics sucked. You heard me say it pretty much every day during the season. But Jason Tatum individually had a fantastic year, and I thought he should have been rewarded for it. He's the type of player where I feel like this bums him out.
You think it bums Jason Tatum out?
Tatum, yeah.
Yeah, well, then he's mentally soft, though. I mean, now a different type of player, this motivates him to go, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to go 38-6 next year, and I'm going to be one of the 5 best players in the league. If it bums him out, then he's mentally soft. That's not good. I want a guy that gets infuriated.
I'm not commenting on that one way or the other. I'm just saying I think based off of I think these individual accolades are important to him, and they are important to some people, Sap. I think that
they're important in the league. Oh no,
when he made his first All-Star game, that really gave him a lift. Last year, he made an All-NBA team. I think that juiced him. I think this fight, I don't know that he'll respond negatively to it, but I do think it bums him out. I think he was fully expecting to make the money.
I mean, he should recover from this, Jet. I hope. I mean, I hope this doesn't derail his
team's
career.
a mess. It doesn't matter. So I don't know.
No, I mean, I think look, and I don't want to sound again like the old guy, but if Jordan thought he should have won an MVP, which I believe in '98, Karl Malone was the MVP of the league, and Jordan just had that in his mind that he was going to beat Karl Malone in the finals, which he did. So that there are guys that are just wired like that. Again, for the most part, those guys are sociopaths. Whether it's Jordan, Kobe, Larry Bird, these guys, were wired differently. Maybe Jason Tatum isn't wired that way. And for the health and safety of his family, good. He's probably a more well-adjusted guy than those guys. Those guys, have issues, but they were able to take that onto the court and become better players, which, is kind of an interesting thing to look at. No, he deserved to be on there. I'm not doubting that. He was as good as Paul George this year, wasn't he? I think.
So. I mean, the team wasn't. That's the difference.
The difference being Paul George and Jimmy Butler, we both agree, are much better defenders than Jason Tatum. And maybe that's something that weighed into it. I don't think Jason Tatum's a bad defender. Those guys tend to be considered more elite defenders. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, maybe. And I know you're not going to back down on this. I just think this was not the year to put LeBron James on the All-NBA team. I just didn't think he logged the games. And they slighted Harden and Durant for it, but they didn't punish LeBron.
Durant played half the games that LeBron played. I mean, Durant played 27 games.
I wouldn't put him on 50. Either. But I don't see that. I don't think LeBron got dinged at all for missing games this year.
Well, if he had played 85% of the games, he would have been first team. It would have been him over Kawhi. Kawhi would have been second team. LeBron would have been first team.
Assuming that the Lakers, if the Lakers finish with a better record, maybe. But if they didn't, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and look, I can't hold the records against Jason Tatum because Milwaukee was one game ahead of the Celtics. So it's not like Milwaukee had this great regular season and the Celtics were far behind them. So I would have put Tatum on there instead of Jimmy Butler. Absolutely.
Miami, you mean, not Milwaukee.
I mean, over Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, and their playoff showing. I mean, actually, now you look at it, the Celtics playoff showing against Brooklyn was better than Miami's against Milwaukee, especially if Brooklyn ends up winning this series. If you're a Celtic fan, you go, hey, we took a game off them, and Milwaukee, which is supposed to be a great team, only took 2. I mean, that's something to celebrate. And I'm sure the Celtics will probably post that somewhere and say, hey, we took a game off the eventual world champions. No, I mean, I don't get bent out of shape over all of this stuff. And I think they pretty much got the first team right. You can make a case of Dame over Luka, but I mean, Luka does so much in terms of rebounding and passing. And those teams were pretty close record-wise, right? But Dallas was the 5 seed and Portland was the 6 seed. That was about the only one. Steph, Giannis, Kawhi, I'm fine with, and the Joker. Those guys are pretty much no-brainers. I mean, if you're the MVP of the league, you should be first-team All-NBA. Although there've been times, I think it was one time where Wilt was first-team All-NBA and Russell was second-team All-NBA, but Russell was the MVP of the league, which is kind of interesting, but could be a different voting. It was a different voting body because back then the players selected the MVP. Now the media selects all.
Yep. So, I mean, a lot of stuff to talk about as we got through it, Sap. And so tomorrow might be no different. Let's quickly, before we get out of here, Sap, preview the games tonight in the NBA. I don't think we're going to see another performance like Kevin Durant's last night, but we do have 2 good games tonight. Granted, one of them will be severely hampered by injury in the Western Conference. So Hawks, Sixers, the line is Philadelphia favored by 7 points. It's 2-2. The game is in Philly. How do you see this one playing out, Sap?
Philadelphia should blow them out depending on how healthy Joel Embiid is. And you hear these things that, you know, the knee is bothering him, but it wasn't just the knee that caused him to go 0 for 12 from the floor in the second half. Great players occasionally have bad halves. I mean, Michael Jordan once in a playoff series went 0 for 11 in the second half. I don't think anybody brings that up, or nor do they ding his legacy because of that. I'm not comparing Joel Embiid to Michael Jordan. He's not at that level. But I think they come back strong. You know, is Ben Simmons going to be more engaged? Probably not. I don't think Ben Simmons all of a sudden is going to change his DNA and become uber aggressive out there. But I think Philadelphia will handle this game. Again, the zigzag says Philadelphia is going to cover, so I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Philadelphia, and I'll take them with the points. They are a team that's really good at home and not so good on the road. This game is at home.
Yeah.
Last game was on the road. Sort of makes sense. This is who they are. I think that they'll win this one without too much of an issue, but I think they'll probably lose the next one in Atlanta, and it'll go to 7 games. So I'll take Philly with the points in this one. And then Clippers, Jazz, again, no Kawhi Leonard tonight, probably done for the playoffs. Certainly, it seems like he's done for the series. And this one is going to be in Utah. The series is 2 games apiece. The Clippers did have all the momentum, but now, I mean, obviously, that's a huge momentum killer when you lose your best player, Sap. Utah is favored by 3 points tonight in Salt Lake City.
That's jumped up to 7.
It's jumped up to 7 now. Okay, that's an old line.
It's jumped up to 7. It was too early in the day. I mean, that's how much Kawhi Leonard means to the Clippers. No surprise. Went from essentially 2-3 to 7. I'll say Utah blows them out as well. We might be sitting on 2 blowouts. I mean, we see a lot of blowouts in the playoffs. It's not that far-fetched to say blowout. I mean, we should have had a blowout last night if the Milwaukee Bucks didn't gag, or at least a comfortable win. Well, they didn't finish the job.
No, they puked on themselves.
They really did. That's exactly what they did. And again, I think it filters down from your coach that looks like he's lost at times, and your star player just he doesn't have a grasp of the game. And that's not something you pick up after years. You know, that's something that's kind of innate. But yeah, I think you're going to look at 2 blowouts tonight. The home teams, they're both the number 1 seeds in their conference. And look, Atlanta's been really a fascinating story in this postseason. Kind of the outside team that's kind of crashed the party and
yeah, they're the turd in the punch bowl.
They really are, because I mean, it was going to be either them and the Knicks in this next round. But they've shown themselves to be really a well-coached team, and they've got an emerging superstar in Trae Young. Utah has to win this game. If they don't win it, now all of a sudden they're going to win 2 in a row. I know Kawhi Leonard's not going to be there, but I expect Utah to win this game. I don't trust Paul George. Is Paul George going to go out and do something similar to Kevin Durant last night? No.
No, and
Just
it's
doesn't
less
have
than,
it in him. He's
it's
not that
even more
good.
than that, Sap. I don't trust Morris as the second best player on a team.
That's the thing. He's their second best player. I mean, he can get hot, right? But he can also get very cold. I would think Utah should win this game, and they should win this series. If Utah can't win this series after their home court advantage, and now Kawhi's out, then shame on them. They'll choke as much as Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I think this is why the Milwaukee thing was so important too. And I have Utah with the 7 points then tonight, Sep. I think that they'll win no problem tonight at home, where they're essentially unbeatable.
Right.
It's opened up so well for the Eastern Conference, and Milwaukee could have had a hobbled team basically coming into the NBA Finals. It's just opened up so well for Milwaukee, and now it's all on Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn, if they're healthy by the time they get to the finals, might end up sweeping whoever they play in the Western Conference. I think they're so much better than these teams. I like Phoenix. I think they're a good team. I like Utah. I think they're a good team. I think that they're no match for Brooklyn.
Not a healthy Brooklyn team. And
Not
then
a healthy,
also
a healthy Brooklyn.
And of course, Durant, right? Because of all these players left, because we agree the 2 best players in the sport are LeBron and Kevin Durant. LeBron's not in the playoffs right now. That Durant, and now the 3rd and 4th best players in the world are not participating in the playoffs. There's like Kevin Durant left and a bunch of other guys that are trying to either win their first championship or
establish
trying
themselves,
to build their legacy. As great as Chris Paul is, he's never played in the finals. Donovan Mitchell has never played in the finals.
Embiid,
Embiid, Paul George,
Giannis, all these guys.
Ben Simmons. I've got a bunch of guys, and then there's Kevin Durant. I mean, it's starting to feel like the Kevin Durant Invitational with LeBron out, Steph Curry out, and now with Kawhi out. Those are the members of the current Mount Rushmore in the NBA, in my opinion, because of their championship DNA. And Durant's the last man standing unless Kawhi makes a miraculous recovery and ends up playing late in the series or comes back for the next series. But it doesn't sound good when you start to hear ACL. And we know how Kawhi is. I don't think Kawhi is going to come back dinged up. That's just not the way he does things.
No. I had, at the beginning of all this, Sep, I had the Nets losing 4 or 5 games total.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel pretty good about that. I think so. They've lost 1 to the Celtics. Now they've lost 2 to the Bucks. I think that I already said I think they're going to win in Milwaukee and end the series. And then I think that they'll crush Philadelphia.
You do. See, I think that could be a series because, again, Embiid would be difficult to match up.
Has no balls.
No. And I think if Brooklyn's really pushed at times, they may show you the same, other than Durant, because, I mean, he proved himself last night, although he got up to a really poor start, and he was able to hang in the game because Milwaukee didn't quite do what they were supposed to do, even in the first half. That should have been a 25-point lead at the half. Barkley and Shaq, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson nailed it at halftime. That's what makes them the best, because normally if you go to a halftime show and one team's up 16, they're like, well, this game's over, and there's,
right,
we're going to see what happens in game 6. All those guys said, this is far from over because Milwaukee is still a stupid team, and they left a lot of points on the board in the first half. Imagine being a sports fan in Wisconsin. You got Budenholzer, can't get out of his own way in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And then you got Matt LaFleur deciding to kick a field goal and give the ball back to Tom Brady with 2 minutes left in the NFC Championship.
You got Aaron Rodgers, who won't even show up.
Oh, well, don't say that. He's ready for his big golf match July 6th.
And then you have the Brewers.
Yeah, they were up. Weren't they up against the Dodgers in the NLCS a couple years ago? And
I believe they were.
Finished that game off. Yeah, it's not a good place to be a sports fan. And then Wisconsin, they're always kind of there in football and basketball, but they can never break through. So,
why don't they have a hockey team there? It's like a hockey town. I would think that
you would think so. Yeah, I think they did.
University of Wisconsin is perennially great at hockey.
Yeah, I know. I've often said that if the NHL expands, that Milwaukee would make a lot of sense. But the problem is Milwaukee to Chicago, I believe, is 90 minutes.
Oh, so and the Blackhawks fans?
The Blackhawks are pretty powerful in the league, and they push back anybody competing with them in that area. That's why the San Francisco Giants have always pushed back and always want Oakland out of the region, out of the market, because they want
Yeah, well, they
that
don't really
market for
have much
themselves.
competition with the A's. I mean, there's not
No,
a
the
lot of
A's have great
fans.
regular seasons. The Giants sometimes don't have great regular seasons and then somehow win World Series. By the way, the Giants tied with Tampa Bay for the best record in baseball. So it's been a good year for me so far in baseball.
That is the only team that you actually root for. Like everything
Yeah.
else is player related, but you just root for the Giants regardless.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird too because who's the idiot that batted third for them on 2 World Series championship teams?
Pablo Sandoval?
No. That's the fat guy. He was on 3 World Series championship teams. He's now very political on Twitter.
Aubrey Huff. Oh, God.
Oh, man. I mean,
he's the worst.
Like,
he's the living
he really
worst.
Is. He is. Oh. He's at a level unto himself.
What a
Aubrey
piece
Huff,
of crap. He is
He
awful.
really is. He's a bit full of himself, I would say, and he's an asshole. So that's a bad combination. So I just love
he wasn't
when
in the Trump cabinet at this.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And he's also 2 World Series championship teams. I'm like, you were on a team with great pitching. You weren't the reason the Giants won 2 World Series in the early 2010s. So yeah, that guy turns me off. But yeah, I still like the Giants.
Now, San Francisco feels about Aubrey Huff as Boston does about Kurt Schilling.
Yeah, what a weird. I know, considering how San Francisco and Boston are, to have those 2 guys, and they deliver championships, which makes it kind of interesting. But
yeah, Schilling a little bit more impactful than Aubrey.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, Schilling was a big game pitcher. I don't. He should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't begrudge that guy in the least as a player. And look, he's got every right to say things that he wants, but he's going to suffer the consequences. And I do think he's one of the best analysts doing baseball on TV, but unfortunately doesn't do it anymore because he couldn't learn to just, talk baseball.
And
it's our loss because I think he's spectacular as an analyst, one of the best.
His loss too.
Yeah, his loss too. A lot of money.
All right. Well, Sap, I'm sure tomorrow will bring us plenty more NBA news. Yeah. That's going to do it for us. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. You can find all of the information about the show on each of our Twitters, at JohnSap25, that's 2 and 5, and at Jet Stryer. And we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. See ya.